Hello? Ah, yes, cool. So, hello everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you today at the Odoo experience. And in today's talk, Maximize Your Reach, Secrets to Enhancing Email Deliverability with Odoo. I'll be sharing some insights I've gained during my 1.5 journey with Odoo. As part of the customer team for 1.5 year, I've developed a keen interest in understanding how mailing works, and I can't wait to unravel some secrets with you to help you improve your email deliverability. So let's dive in. During the talk, don't hesitate to use the pad to ask some questions, and we will answer them at the end. So here is a little overview of my agenda. First, we will talk about using your default environment in Odoo. And then I will have a look at how to use your own domain name with Odoo's default server. And finally, I will share some notes about other outgoing and incoming options. Let's start. So, here is my short story. I just started with Odoo. I just created a new database. What do I need to do to configure my emails? Nothing. So I'll let you have a look to this small GIF to see how simple and fast it is to send my first email. I just click in my CRM, for example, in my first opportunity, and I can send a message just like that a few minutes after creating my database. You just need to note that when you create your database in SAS or SH, you will have an email limit set per day. So, here is a typical header of an email from Odoo to your Gmail email, for example. Since Odoo 15, all your emails will be sent from notification at yourdatabase.odoo.com. The reply to address will be depending on the model, and if this model has an alias configured, it can be either the catch-all you will respond to, or this alias. So, for example, if you send an email from the CRM, the reply to will be the alias, and if it's from the contact application, send an email from the contact application here. It will be to the catch-all. You can see it there. The bounce or the return pass is used to retrieve information about not received emails. You can find your bounce address in the new alias domain menu. You will see that later, or in the header of your email. Don't hesitate to have a look on the internet if you don't know where to find it. The notification system will allow you to rewrite the user's email address in order to use Odoo's subdomain. So you can see that my email is sent from mydatabaseemail.odoo.com. It will be your database name just right there. So doing that, you will beneficiate from the good configuration of Odoo DNS. Indeed, your user can have any address, because if you don't use the notification system, the email will be sent from the user's email address, and it can be wrongly configured to send emails with Odoo. And that can mess up your whole email configuration, and your email will never be received, and we don't want that. So this system appears since the version 15 of Odoo, with the new key in the system parameters, the mail default form filter. It was not the case before Odoo 15, so it's possible that you don't have this key in the system parameters if you upgrade it, for example. It did appear in Odoo 17. The configuration will be easier to set up, but patience, we will see that later. So, thanks to that, you can see that the from, the reply to, and the return pass are aligned. You don't have to, we are not going into details about this, but remind yourself that it's very important that the three domains are aligned. Okay, so now I beneficiate from Odoo subdomain. My emails are properly delivered. I can have a few emails ending up in spam, of course. It's very, very rare, but it can happen. So what if I want to test if my email from Odoo's default configuration are properly sent? You can use a lot of tools on the internet, and for example, I use this one called Mail Tester. You can access it very easily. So here I can see that I have a 10 out of 10, a very good rate, and it means that my email is properly configured, properly sent, and properly received, which is the most important. I can see there that my email is properly sent from notification at mydatabase.odoo.com. Don't hesitate to use tools when you do some configuration in your email configuration, especially if you do some changes. So the conclusion to this slide is, by default, it's working perfectly. OK, so now I am using my Odoo database. I send my first email. Everything is working properly. That's nice. But what if I have my own domain that I bought from OVH or another provider, for example, that I'm already using for another website or another email box, and I don't want emails to be sent from Odoo subdomain? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Everything is possible with Odoo, of course. And don't hesitate to refer to our documentation right there, accessible by this QR code, or to our support if you don't know how to configure your domain. So should I just put my domain like that somewhere in Odoo and it will work? No. If you choose to use your own domain, you will have to do carefully your configuration. Here we are in the case where I want to use my own domain, but still want to use Odoo's default server. So first step, I will need to modify the system parameters if I am using Odoo version before Odoo 17, or to modify my domain or my domains in the settings directly in the new alias domain menu. So here is a little sneak peek about the new alias domain menu, but we will come back to it later. And the second step, I put a little star because actually it's the most important one, to configure my DNS. We will see how to do it in the slide after. So now my emails will be sent from my domain. Note that the configuration that we are going to talk about can be different from one provider to another, but the idea is the same, and don't hesitate to refer to their documentation and to ours. So as I mentioned, in Odoo 17, the multi-company domain is introduced. Therefore, the change of the catch-all domain will be a bit different and not done from the same menu. OK, let's say I am in my Odoo database, I added my domain, and I did nothing else. I skipped the second part because I don't want to do it now. Let's test if it's working or not. As you can see, it's not working. So what I need to do, I need to configure my DNS. Just a note, when you test your configuration, don't hesitate to wait a bit for testing after changing your configuration. Why? Because your DNS record can take a bit to propagate across the internet. This waiting is referring to the TTL notion in the DNS. I invite you to do some more research about what to put in your TTL, because we are not going to talk about it now. So let's start with my first DNS record, the SPF, the Sender Policy Framework. It is designed to verify that the sender is authorized to send messages on behalf of the configured domain. When an email is received, the recipient's mail server checks the SPF record of the sender's domain. It will ensure that the sender server is an authorized server. So, I did all my configuration in OVH, but it will probably look the same if you use another provider. So here you can see my SPF record just below the in-text record. What does it say, the include spf.odoo.com? It will look for Odoo DNS information to send my email. So it says that I include in my domain the configuration made for the SPF record of Odoo, which is properly configured, because I am using Odoo's mail server. So another tag will be the whole, and you will see something very important is the little symbol before the whole. You can have a minus, you can have a plus, and you can have this one, the tilde, meaning that you have several policies for your SPF record. It can be strict, soft fail, or neutral. Here I choose the soft fail, meaning that if my email doesn't pass the SPF checks, it's still accepted, but marked as potentially suspicious. So here I did a little test before configuring my SPF record. As I mentioned, we can use a lot of tools in the internet. This one is MX Toolbox, and it can show you a little overview of your records. So here it's not configured, as it mentioned. And now it's when I configured it properly, it's green, meaning that it's great, but you need to go a little deeper if you want to know if your configuration is good or not. So now the DKIM, the domain keys identified mail, it's an authentication method. How does it work? It will use some cryptography algorithms to verify that the email hasn't been changed or hasn't been altered, that someone is not modifying your email between the sending and the receiving, and that it truly comes from you. For that, the sender SMTP servers add a digital signature using a private key. This key is published in the sender DNS. The recipient's email server needs to retrieve the key in order to decrypt the signature and verify the authenticity of your message. Since you're using your own domain, the key is supposed to be found in your configuration. But you don't need to publish the key directly in your DNS because Odoo is managing it. Instead, you only need to redirect the Odoo selector to the Odoo DNS. That's why you can see in my record that I added a CNAME, pointing to Odoo's domain. If I use a subdomain, for example, mail.embrwork.com, I will put my subdomain right after the domain key on the first line. So here is my little test before publishing my DKIM record, and this is after. If I want to check if my DKIM record is correct, I can test Odoo's one. And if I want to test my own, you will see that I put the Odoo selector right after. If you test your DKIM without putting the Odoo selector, you will have no result. So now let's talk about the DeMark. The DeMark combines both SPF and DKIM to create a series of rules for authentication, meaning that only genuine emails will come through. So what does the DeMark do? It tells your email system what to do if an email doesn't pass those checks. If an email doesn't follow the rules, it might be blocked or treated differently. The DeMark is not mandatory, but highly advised as it is an additional security to protect me if someone else wants to use my own domain. No, under the name of spoof attempt. So we have different levels of security for your DeMark. You can see that I added some tags in my DeMark. You cannot see them all, but we will see them after. So the first tag is the P equal none. What does it mean? This will monitor your email traffic. So if you added some other tags to have some reports sent to your email address, you will only receive reports of your email traffic when you put the P equal none. No further action are taken. You need to know that also other tags are existing. The P equal quarantine, it will send the authorized email to the spam folder. And finally, I have the P equal reject. The unauthorized email will be directly rejected. So my goal when I use DeMark is to increase the security of my policy step by step. So my first step here is the none. And after receiving some reports, I will be able to increase my policy. So you can see some other tags, as mentioned, in my DeMark record. For example, the RUA and the RUF. So it's the aggregates reports and the forensic reports. It's two mechanisms to receive reports on your email authentication result. When you will put those tags, you will receive daily or weekly reports in your email saying what's going on with my domain. The SPF and the DKIM are two other concepts to ensure good authentication. Other tags exist. Don't hesitate to check them on the internet. So here, my DeMark record is not published, and here it's properly configured. You can see I added two email addresses that I own to receive the report I was talking about. So now I configured all my DNS records, and I have a 10 after 10 if I test, a bit later, of course. So we saw how to configure your DNS record that will act like security guards for your emails. Now my email will unlikely finish in the spam folder and reach properly their recipients. So now a note about other outgoing option. We saw that we can use your domain with Odoo's default server, but you can also use your own server depending on your needs. Let's see how to do that. Don't hesitate, once again, to follow our documentation. You already know that when you create a new database, SAS or SH, you have your Odoo mail server by default. Before, it was there, but you weren't able to see it. Now, you can, since 16.3. Odoo's mail server can be configured using the command line interface, the CLI. The default Odoo server will be automatically visible in your Odoo 17 database. You don't need to add it manually. Okay, that's nice to use Odoo's default server and to see it, but what's the point? You will be able to use Odoo's default server for your transactional mailing, for example, and your own email server for your mass mailing if you want. Or, for example, if you must put an outgoing server, like for the Italian localization or for some other accounting localization. Small warning, for the on-premise database, the command line interface exists, and you can install it, and you have the documentation just right there, but you won't be able to use Odoo's default server, of course. So if you want to send marketing campaigns and don't depend on Odoo daily limits, you are using Odoo on-premise, you will need a custom outgoing server, as we said. Be sure to check our documentation and your provider's one to have all the information to configure your own custom server. If you go on the internet and type in your server, you will have type in your server name, you will have all the information you need to configure it properly. Here I have an example with Mailjet, but it can be anyone. Note that this menu is only visible for the admin in debug mode. And be careful that the port 25 is closed. Small warning, will also have some limitation about the number of the outgoing email if you are using another provider. For example, for Mailjet, they also have limitations, so don't hesitate to check. And you also need to adapt your DNS record with your outgoing server if you use one. So here is a small resume of what you can do. Since 16.3, you can use Odoo default server, and you can use a custom server simultaneously. Of course, you can use several custom servers depending on your need. How it will work? You will need to set the priority of the Odoo server higher. In the settings of your server, you will need to put a small number for the priority, then the number set for the priority of the mass mailing one, the second one. Suppose I want to send transactional email, for example, a quotation or an invoice. In that case, the email will go through the server with the highest priority, Odoo's one, and then you will benefit from the Odoo good encapsulation. If you have configured your custom server on your email marketing application settings, all your mass mailing campaign will be sent through your custom email server. So to control which one will be used, it will depend on your configuration. If you have multiple custom servers, you will be able to play with the from filter to determine which server will be used. If the address of the sender matches the from filter one of your custom outgoing server, this specific server will be used. If you need to see what does it look like in reality, I invite you to check tomorrow's talk, the second one, for the practical use case. Finally, we learned a lot about outgoing emails today, but what about incomings? You need to know that incoming emails are coming into your database without any further configuration if you use Odoo subdomain and Odoo server by default without adding your domain or a specific custom server, incoming or outgoing. So it should work like that, and it's working. If you want to use your own domain and your own server, you will add additional configuration for incoming email. I cannot just put my DNS and it will work, no. But if you want to know more, you will need to go to tomorrow's talk in the Auditorium 2000C for Quentin Baptiste talk. I will not reveal you everything today. So, little summary. Today we learn how to send emails with Odoo, how to use your own domain with Odoo server, and to configure it for a good deliverability. And we discover a few new features that will be explained more tomorrow. We've given you option for using your own domain and integrating servers, including the Odoo server. We present you with a lot of options for your emails, so now it's up to you to decide what's the best for you. And thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Emma, for the talk. So right now I'm doing the pad. So I had 4 questions for you. The first one, if I remove the standard settings to use my own domain, Is it easy to switch back to Odoo server?
Yes, of course. If I have configured everything like we mentioned in the talk, so in the system parameters, if I use Odoo version before 17, or if in the new alias domain menu, if I put my domain there and I did all my configuration for outgoing and incoming email, if I want to switch back to Odoo's one, it's very easy. I just have to remove all the settings in the system parameters, in the setting menu if I've set an outgoing server for mass mailing, for example, and just put back your database information in it, and it will work as at the beginning.
Thank you very much. Another question is, can you show the full configuration of your domain on the OVH side?
Yes, of course. Hop. Comment je fais, Baptiste?
You're on the Odoo screen.
Ça marche pas.
Okay, we can switch to the next question. Don't worry.
Yeah, I can put it.
You can do it?
Yes, I can do it.
So good? But you need to put it on the other screen.
Yes, I just wanted to show if it's working now. Okay, internet doesn't seem to be with me today. Ah,
Yeah.
nice. So, as I mentioned, I'm using OVH for my domain, but you can have another provider. It's not a problem at all. So, for example, for my domain, embratwork.com, I can access easily the DNS settings here. So here, for example, you can see my SPF. It's clearly written here. The whole record is there. Here I have my DKIM, my DeMark, for example, sorry. And here I have the DKIM here. If I want to add another entry, it's as simple like that. I just add an entry, choose the record I want to create, and then add it. If you don't know what to put in it, you can refer to our documentation.
Thank you. I have a question coming. I'm waiting for it to finish. Is anything pre-configured or suggested? I'm not sure to understand the question. So maybe you can rephrase and we can come back to it after? Okay, I will answer about it after, okay? Are there specific providers that you can recommend?
For outgoing options?
Yes.
You can, it will depend on your needs. For example, if you need outgoing server for transactional mailing, if you need to have several of them, you can use the one that we tested and documented correctly in our documentation. And it will be different if you need a server only for mass mailing, for example. But also, I invite you to check our documentation because we've tested and we write a lot about the different steps to configure it. So I will advise you to do that.
Thank you. How does Odoo knows which server is used for transactional and which one is used for mass mailing?
As I mentioned, it will depend on the priority and on your settings. In the settings of your mass mailing, I can put the server that I want to use. So if I put my server there, it will take this one.
Somebody told me, tell her she's very pretty. Thank you, guys. Somebody asked about OVH, is there is anything pre-configured or suggested? DNS, DeMark, etc. on OVH.
Like?
So if I understand correctly the question, I'm not sure. It's like when you bought your domain on OVH, is there anything pre-configured? And I think there is, yes, probably because OVH is his own system, so he has his own DNS and I think
yes, you will have a few keys proposed, but you can delete them and add some more if you want to configure your domain according to the server you are using, Odoo's one or another one.
Okay, maybe we have time for our last question. Sending email to 3,000 contacts at the same time, does it use patching? I don't know exactly what is the patching.
Patching in Odoo is...
No, patching. With
patching?
A P.
With a P?
Maybe it's a B?
I don't know.
Okay, so I think that's it for the question. No more question?
We will be at the marketing booth this noon if you have more questions. This afternoon if you have more questions about this talk.
Yeah, from 1 to 2 is just behind over there if you have any question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma.
Je ne peux pas toucher.